The night tasted like rain and rust, sharp, metallic, and cold enough to burn the back of my throat. I didn't remember when I started running. Only that I couldn't stop. Not with the envelope tearing in my hand. Not with footsteps echoing behind me. Not with voices calling my name like a death sentence. Emma, Emma Hale. Their shouts bounced off the soaked brick walls as I sprinted down the narrow alley, splashing through dirty puddles. Lungs begging for air I didn't have. My heart slammed so loudly I couldn't tell where the thunder ended, and my pulse began. I clutched the envelope tighter. It was soggy from the rain, but the number inside, that number was burned into my skull. $90,000. Debt I didn't owe. Debt I didn't even know existed until the hospital director handed it to me with pity in his eyes. I skidded around a corner, hoping, praying the alley led somewhere. Anywhere. That didn't end with me sprawled on concrete. The buildings pressed in, stretching upward like jagged, merciless teeth. My breath ripped out in ragged gasps. My legs were turning to water. Then I collided with something solid. Something huge. Something unmovable. My palms slapped against a chest that didn't give an inch. For a second, the world blurred. Rain. My heartbeat. The smell of cold gunmetal. And a man standing like he'd been carved out of shadow. I stumbled back. But his hand caught my wrist before I could fall. Easy, the word, slid through the storm. Low and steady. Dangerous. The way a drawn knife is dangerous, quiet. Gleaming. Deliberate. I lifted my eyes. And the streetlight behind him caught the edges of his face. Dark hair, slicked back from the rain. Jaw rough with stubble. Eyes unnervingly calm. Like he'd been expecting me. He didn't look winded. He didn't look startled. He looked like a man who could stand perfectly still while the world tried to kill him. I'm sorry. The words tumbled out. I didn't mean to. I was just pleased. I don't know. He tilted his head slightly. Studying me. Not frightened. Not confused. Just measuring. Emma Hale. He said softly. My stomach dropped. He shouldn't have known my name. I tried to step back again. But he didn't let go of my wrist. His grip wasn't painful. It was worse, controlled. Like he wanted me to know exactly how easily he could stop me. Behind me. Footsteps pounded around the corner. 3 men. Soaked in black. Voices sharp and breathless. There, one of them shouted. The stranger's eyes flicked over my shoulder. Something shifted in him, an almost imperceptible tightening around his mouth. A spark of annoyance. Or recognition. Or restraint. He moved before the thought had time to fully form in my head. 1 second. I was standing on unsteady legs. The next. I was pulled behind him. His body a barrier between me and the men closing in. Stay close. He murmured. I did, not because he commanded it, but because everything in me screamed that stepping away from him was more dangerous than stepping toward the men chasing me. You. The first man growled. Pointing at him. Hand her over. The stranger didn't bother answering. He simply angled himself slightly, keeping me blocked. Protected. Shielded. Even in the rain. I saw the flash of metal under his coat. A gun. My breath caught. The man in front of me wasn't just any stranger. He was one of them. One of the men who lived in whispered rumors. The kind mothers warned daughters about. My voice barely worked. Who are you? His gaze lowered to the torn envelope, crushed in my grip. That, he said quietly, depends on whether you're holding what I think you are. A shiver crawled the length of my spine. What do you mean? He stepped closer. And though he didn't touch me, his presence wrapped around me like heat. You're holding something that belongs to me. I froze. No, I whispered. No. This is my father's debt. He finished for me. Yes. And debts don't disappear just because the man who racked them up does. My throat tightened painfully. The name barely formed on my tongue. You're Nikolai Voss. The look he gave me was answer enough. A name spoken with fear by half the city. A man known not for forgiveness, but for precision, calculated danger, a reputation so cold and quiet, it felt like something whispered through locked doors. And I had crashed into him. His eyes flicked toward the men again. Emma, he said, my name sounding deadly and calm in his voice. You owe me $90,000. I don't. I choked. I didn't even know. You know now. Before I could answer, headlights flared at the end of the alley. Tires screeched. Another car. Another faction. Another threat. Gunfire split the night open. Everything exploded at once. I dropped instinctively, hands over my head. But Nikolai moved faster. His body slammed into mine, pushing me behind a dented dumpster as bullets cracked through the air. The scent of gunpowder burned sharp and violent. Don't move, he barked, his arm caged around me, his breath warm against my ear. He wasn't shaking like I was. He wasn't panicked. He was steady, terrifyingly steady. While the world came apart around us, when the gunfire paused, he yanked me up by the wrist and pulled me toward the shadow between two buildings. Move, he ordered. Now. My bag. You won't need it. I stumbled beside him, legs numb, mind fogged with adrenaline and fear. The men behind us were shouting, scrambling. One voice pierced the chaos. She's worth money, get her. I felt Nikolai's hand tighten around mine. He didn't look back. He didn't slow. He didn't hesitate. Within seconds, we reached a black SUV parked halfway under a broken streetlight. He shoved the passenger door open. In? He said. I stared at him. You're kidnapping me. If I were kidnapping you? You wouldn't have a choice. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Get in. A bullet shattered the pavement inches from my feet. I got in. The door slammed, and the world lurched as he peeled away from the curb. The engine roared beneath us, tires screaming as he cut through alleys and empty streets like he owned them. Maybe he did. City lights blurred past. Rain streaked across the windshield, and in the silence between gunshots and breath, the truth settled in. I wasn't running anymore. I was being taken. I didn't realize we'd left the city until the buildings shrank into distant shapes behind us. The road smoothed beneath the tires, climbing upward, winding through hills that glowed faintly under the storm. Nikolai didn't look at me. Not once. Not even when he spoke. You're safe now. I laughed. But the sound cracked. Safe. With you. Yes. He said simply. With me. The confidence in his voice unnerved me more than the gunfire. Where are you taking me? My home. The word felt heavy. Final. You can't just lock me somewhere and expect me to, if you step foot outside before morning. He said. They'll find you. And they won't be as patient as I am. The car turned onto a private road, lined with security lights, that flickered through the rain. A mansion rose at the top of the hill glass. Steel. Stone. Sharp and cold as its owner. Guards stepped forward. Nikolai didn't slow. They parted without a word. We reached the garage. And he finally looked at me. His eyes were darker than the storm behind him. You stay here, he said quietly. You breathe here. You live here. Until I say otherwise. I shook my head. Voice barely more than a whisper. You can't keep me here. His reply was soft, almost gentle. If you leave, Emma, you'll be dead before sunrise. For a moment, just a moment, I believed him. And that was worse than fear, because it meant this man, this stranger, carved from shadows, was the only thing keeping me alive. And God help me, some part of me wasn't sure if I should run from him, or toward him. I woke to the sound of music, soft, aching, impossibly gentle. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The sheets were too clean, the air too still, the room too big for someone like me. But the piano, that was real. A melody drifted through the quiet halls, slow, mournful, like someone trying to remember a dream they'd already lost. I followed it, barefoot, heart thudding in my chest. The mansion felt different in the morning light, still cold. It's still enormous, but no longer suffocating. More like a place filled with ghosts instead of monsters. When I reached the living room, I stopped in the doorway. Nikolai sat at the grand piano, sleeves rolled up, rain still drying in his hair. His hands moved with an unexpected softness across the keys, coaxing out a sound that didn't match anything I knew about him. I stared. This man had dragged me out of gunfire. This man had killed people to keep me alive. This man had threatened me with debt and danger. And yet here he was, playing something that sounded like heartbreak. He didn't look up when he spoke. "You're awake?" I swallowed. "I didn't know you played." He kept his eyes on the keys. "I don't. Not for anyone." The implication hung in the air. I didn't know what to do with it. He played one last note, letting it fade before he finally turned to face me. There was something different about him in the morning, less armor, less shadow. Like dawn had stripped away the parts he hid behind. "You hungry?" he asked. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a command. Just a question. I nodded, even though I didn't want to follow him. But I did. The kitchen was warm, the smell of coffee grounding me in a way the rest of this place didn't. Nikolai moved quietly, efficiently, like he'd done this 1,000 times. He set a plate in front of me, and I stared at it like it was evidence. "You didn't poison it, did you?" I muttered. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Not today." I didn't know whether to laugh or run. "But you're controlling me," I accused softly. "You took my phone, my freedom, my choice." He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "If I wanted control, Emma," he said calmly, "you wouldn't be eating across the room." Heat crawled up my neck. I didn't want him to see it, but he always seemed to see more than I wanted him to. The room thickened between us, air charged, heavy, impossible to breathe. I hated how aware I was of him. I hated how his gaze pinned me in place. Maybe I hated how part of me didn't want to look away. But I did. I pushed the plate aside and stood abruptly. "You don't get to make me feel safe," I whispered. "Not when you're the reason I'm in danger." His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I'm the reason you're alive." I didn't have an answer for that. Later, when I wandered into his library, I found a photograph on a shelf. Nikolai stood beside a man who looked like him, same sharp jaw, same dark eyes, but softer. Kinda. They were smiling, really smiling, like life had been easier before it broke them. I didn't hear him enter behind me. "That was my brother," he said. The softness in his tone cracked something in me. "What happened to him?" I asked. He stepped beside me, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin. "He died because of the same family that's hunting you," he said quietly. "They took him from me." I looked at the man in the picture, frozen in time. "I'm sorry." Nikolai shook his head slightly. Your father saved my life once. Pulled me out of a situation I shouldn't have survived. I tried to repay him. But he vanished. Now he's gone. And the debt remains. Not the money. The promise. He glanced at me. And I don't break promises. His walls didn't just lower, they cracked, revealing something raw beneath the surface. Something almost human. That evening, he came home late. Blood on his knuckles. Bruises blooming along his jaw. I didn't think I moved toward him. Grabbing the first aid kit from the counter, he watched me with a mixture of amusement and exhaustion as I reached for his hand. I can do it myself, he murmured. I'm a nurse. I said, let me. When my fingers brushed his skin, he sucked in a slow breath. Not from pain, something else. Something dangerous. You should be careful touching me like that, he whispered. I might get used to it. The words hit harder than any bullet that night. My hands trembled. But I kept going, dabbing antiseptic across his knuckles. His gaze didn't leave me not once. It felt like he was studying me, memorizing me, peeling back every layer I tried to hide. When I finished wrapping the bandage, our hands lingered together too long, too close, too warm, too much. I pulled back first. I had to. Hours passed. The mansion grew quiet, heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then Nikolai's phone buzzed on the counter. He answered and clipped. Icy, Russian hard consonants. Shaba, anger. When he hung up, his face had changed. The shadows were back, darker than before. What is it? I asked. Someone inside my organization sold us out. My breath caught. What? Before he could answer, the house flickered. Then everything went black. The power died. And with it, the illusion of safety. The only light came from the distant city below, too weak, too far away to matter. Nikolai's silhouette was a dark, steady shape in front of me. Don't move, he whispered. The air between us shifted, thickened. Electric? I could hear his breathing. He could hear mine. Somewhere in the darkness, something in me leaned toward him, and he leaned back. I don't know if he meant to. I don't know if I did. But the space between us was disappearing, inch by slow-burning inch. His hand brushed mine, just the back of his knuckles against my fingers. The smallest touch, the loudest confession. My breath caught. His whispered my name. Emma. And then, a gunshot tore through the night. Glass shattered. Light exploded. Shouts erupted downstairs. Nikolai spun, grabbed my arm, and the spell we'd been sinking into shattered as violently as the windows. They're here, he said. The rival Mafia had found us. My blood iced. What do we do? He didn't hesitate. He pulled me down the hallway. A heart-pounding chaos around us. The walls shook with impact. Men shouted. Footsteps pounded like thunder. We reached a wall of bookshelves, and he pressed a hidden panel. A metal door slid open behind it. He turned to me fully. For the first time, not as a man of power, but as someone who might actually lose something. Stay in here, he said. His voice wasn't steady. It was low. Rough. Trembling with something I didn't dare name. Do not open the door for anyone but me. Nikolai, he cupped my cheek just once. Just long enough for me to feel the warmth of his palm. The tremble in his breath. Stay alive for me. The door sealed before I could reply. I pressed both palms against the cold metal. Gunfire roared outside. Shouts. Footsteps. Silence. More gunfire. But all I could think about was the look in his eyes. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of him not coming back. The gunfire stopped too suddenly. like the night itself had been sliced open and left bleeding in silence. Inside the panic room, I pressed my ear to the cold metal door. Breath shaking. Fingers numb. I couldn't hear anything except the echoes inside my own head. Then a thud. Something heavy. A body. Or someone falling. My heart clawed at my ribs. "Nikolai," I whispered. No answer. Seconds stretched like hours. So long and suffocating. I thought the door would crush me from the inside. Then the lock clicked. The door cracked open. And he stood there. Nikolai leaned against the frame. Blood soaking through his shirt. Eyes dark with pain but alive. Alive. The air left my lungs so fast I almost dropped to my knees. He gave a weak, crooked smirk. "Miss me?" I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stepped into him. Fingers grabbing the front of his shirt like I needed to feel he was real. He flinched from the pain. But his hand still rose to touch the back of my head. "Come on," he murmured. "We can't stay." We fled the mansion, long before sunrise. Driving through endless sheets of rain toward a safe house, Nikolai trusted more than his own home. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His breathing ragged. I could tell every movement hurt him. But he wouldn't stop. Not yet. When we finally reached the cabin, hidden deep in the hills, the storm crashed around us, like the world was trying to break through the walls. There was only one bed. The air turned thick when our eyes met. Not sexual, not yet. Just two people too exhausted to pretend anymore. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, rain dripping from his hair. I stood near the door, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear the storm. "Why?" I whispered. My voice cracked. "Why do you keep risking your life for me?" His head lifted slowly. When he spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of the armor he wore around everyone else. "Because," he said, "you're the first thing in years worth dying for." The words hit me like another kind of bullet, one that didn't hurt, but carved something open inside me. I crossed the room before I knew I was moving. He caught my wrist, fingers warm even through the tremble. "Don't," he breathed. "Not yet. If you touch me right now, I won't have the strength to stop. I don't want you to stop." His eyes fluttered shut, jaw tightening, like he was fighting something inside himself. But neither of us got the chance to continue, because dawn came with another betrayal. It started with the smallest sound. A twig snapping outside the cabin. Then another. Then the crash of a door, exploding inward. Nikolai shoved me to the floor as bullets tore through the wood. His men shouted. The rival family poured in. Faces twisted with rage. The world became chaos. Smoke. Fire. Shattered wood. Nikolai fought like a man, with nothing left to lose. Every shot he fired was meant to kill. Every breath he took was a promise he'd get me out alive or die trying. I didn't stay down. I couldn't. Not when I saw a shadow moving behind him, a gun raised to his back. Before fear could freeze me, I grabbed a fallen pistol. The metal was cold in my hand. "Emma, stay down," he shouted. But I'd already aimed. Already pulled the trigger. The man behind him dropped. Silence punched through the room. Nikolai turned slowly, like he couldn't believe what he'd heard, or what I'd done. His eyes found mine. Shock. Pride. Something close to heartbreak. He stepped toward me, breath trembling. "Good girl," he murmured. His voice was rough. "Wrecked. Don't stop fighting." And for the first time, I didn't feel like a burden he had to protect. I felt like someone he needed beside him. Together, we pushed through the last wave of attackers until the gunfire faded into nothing. Until the only sound left was rain pounding against the broken cabin roof. Outside, smoke curled into the morning sky. The storm had quieted, turning the world into a grey, fragile stillness. Nikolai stood near the fallen porch beam, chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. His shirt was torn, blood dried along his ribs. His hands shook, not from fear, but from everything he'd held back. I stepped toward him. He didn't move away. When I reached him, he lifted a trembling hand and cupped my face. His thumb brushed the corner of my mouth. Slow and reverent. "If you keep touching me like this," he whispered, voice hoarse, "I won't let you go." My heart cracked open. I didn't answer with words. I rose onto my toes, fingers curling into his jacket. And he met me halfway. The kiss wasn't gentle, wasn't soft, wasn't careful. It was desperate, exhausted. A confession made of heat and breath and relief so intense it nearly brought me to my knees. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were shaking. Not from fear, from everything that had been building between us since the night I ran into him. The days after the attack were strangely quiet. Too quiet. His organization cleaned up the chaos. The rival family retreated into the shadows. No more calls. Action. No more ambushes. Just a fragile peace neither of us trusted. Nikolai and I stayed in the penthouse overlooking the city. He healed slowly. I healed faster. But something between us had shifted into something neither of us could unfeel. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, he stood on the balcony with a glass in his hand. I joined him silently. The city lights stretched like constellations below us. He didn't look at me when he asked, "Do you want your old life back?" I swallowed. My old life. Nursing shifts. Bare apartment. Loneliness. Silence. Safety that never felt like safety. I looked at him. Really looked. The scars on his knuckles. The bandages on his ribs. The weight he carried in his shoulders. The man who had killed to protect me, and bled in front of me, and trembled when he held me. That life doesn't fit anymore, I said softly. His breath hitched. Not dramatically. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. He turned then. Fully. Completely. Like he'd been waiting to hear those exact words from my mouth. He reached for me, pulling me gently, almost cautiously, onto his lap as he settled into the lounge chair, his arms wrapped around my waist. Warm. Solid. Possessive. "Then tell me what you want," he murmured. I didn't hesitate. "You." The word felt like truth leaving my lungs. His hand slid up my back, stopping at the base of my neck. When he spoke, his voice was low and reverent, like he was giving an oath instead of answering. "Then you're not my prisoner," he said. "You're mine." The city glowed below us, soft and golden. Rain misted the air again. Gentle this time. Not violent. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the heartbeat that had nearly stopped fighting in that safe house. Listening to the life he kept choosing for me. With me. For the first time. Danger didn't feel deadly. It felt like home. Because I wasn't choosing the darkness of his world. I was choosing the man who stepped into its shadows for me. The most dangerous man alive. And the only place I'd ever truly felt safe. If you enjoyed this story, if the tension, the danger, and the slow burn pull between Emma and Nikolai kept you here until the final second, then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves Mafia romance as much as you do. Your comments mean the world. Tell me what you felt. What moment hit you the hardest? And which part of their story you want to see next. Thank you for listening. And for supporting these long, emotional stories, week after week. I'll see you in the next chapter.